Free practice 1 and 2 in Austria have concluded. And in today's video, we are going to analyze the times. Let's see who is favored, who is less so, in which sector a team is stronger. And in addition, we are also going to look at the updates together. As always, I remind you before we start to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. That's here on the channel where we analyze every session and bring you all the Formula 1 news and specifically Ferrari-related news. With that said, let's get started by seeing that Ferrari finished free practice, 2 in 5th place with Leclerc and 10th place with Hamilton. Leclerc tackled free practice 2 as the first actual session of the weekend. Because we saw that in free practice, Juan Beganovic took Leclerc's seat, doing one of the rookie sessions that is scheduled by regulation throughout the year. So we saw Leclerc in such an important weekend for Ferrari because he brought the first real decisive update package on the red, namely the new bottom. Well, they decided to debut Beganovic in free practice, one with, among other things, the risk of rain for free practice. 2 luckily for Ferrari, it didn't rain. Then in free practice 2, and so after Leclerc went down and did a normal session in free practice 2. However, there was this risk here also to take into consideration. Anyway, Leclerc always goes strong in Austria. It's a circuit he knows well. So it makes sense that we decided to throw this update package into this weekend. And I also understand Beganovic's choice. Having said that, we have Hamilton in 10th position and both drivers didn't feel very comfortable. But before going into the detailed analysis of Ferrari, I want to comment on the times in general. In fact, these are the times of free practice. 2, we have 2 McLarens up front. Norris and Piastri with, among other things, the reminder. Norris also skipped free practice, 1 in favor of Dunn, who instead did free practice, 1 among other things very well. He finished in 4th position, he's a 10th from Piastri. So he did a great time and did a great job, not making mistakes, not making errors. In the McLaren house and Norris, so he debuted in free practice 2, and he's already put himself ahead of Piastri, despite Piastri having done 1 more session than him. So a lot of great stuff. Norris, who started this weekend well, is a track that he likes a lot. And so it makes sense that he went so fast. But the standings speak clearly. We see a McLaren up there 1-2 in the lead. With, among other things, I point out to you the best sectors. Fuchsia here on the right, who made them all Norris 16 and 299. First sector Fuchsia of Norris, 28 and 737. Second sector Fuchsia of Norris, and third sector 19 and 458, always of Norris. So a favorite McLaren, a favorite Norris on this track. And also pay attention to the world issue, because Norris has this chance here to try to get closer in the ranking. Now I will also show you the ranking. Let's go see it together. Which sees Piastri in first position and Norris second, 22 points behind Piastri. So this is definitely an opportunity for Norris to try to get closer. However, continuing to analyze the free practice 2 standings, let's see. Third is Verstappen. In fact, Verstappen, if we want to consider this weekend, is actually the second force, and therefore the one who can play for the 3rd position, then on the podium. Because we've seen a Red Bull that struggles a bit more, maybe in race pace, but on the single lap it seems to be very good, and it made a difference even on the other teams. As the second force, therefore, Red Bull currently seems to be favored to be behind McLaren. And then, surprisingly, we saw Stroll in 4th place, which I think isn't much of a surprise for Aston Martin in the sense that we've already seen it from Monaco onwards, since Nui joined the team, since they brought the first updates to the bottom, and also to the sides. We've seen an improving Aston Martin, so watch out for Aston, especially in qualifying, which could make the difference. Then we will also look at the times with telemetry mainly. Aston, it's strong in the 1st and 2nd sector, where traction matters, and then it's slower in the driven part, in the fast part of the track, in the 3rd sector, where having more aerodynamic load also matters. That's why I see them less favored in the race and more favored perhaps in terms of qualification. 5th is Leclerc, who also made a small mistake. Now I'll show you the image of the mistake Leclerc made. And Leclerc, as we said, was only able to do free practice 2 because he didn't do free practice 1 here. And when he got in the car for the first time this weekend for free practice 2, now I'll show you the small mistake he made, a slip up that, among other things, he made 2 of. Indeed, here the image we practically saw on 2 occasions in free practice, 2 where Leclerc made a mistake. He made a mistake in progress, he went long and then ended up in the grass. From what I've seen, what I could also see from the onboard, you can see that the Ferrari is very nervous. In fact, in progress, you can't go strong into the curve, because if you go too strong into the curve, you go to progress, lose the rear, and therefore make these mistakes. Leclerc has committed twice. We also saw a small slip by Hamilton, and we also saw how Hamilton, I'm talking about it now, we saw how Hamilton created impeding on Kimi Antonelli. In fact, Kimi had to go wide outside. You can see very well in this shot where Hamilton stayed in the middle, he didn't see Kimi. To avoid him, he had to go off the track, and if there had been gravel there, it would have been a serious problem. So be careful with these cases. As long as it's not that serious, you only get a fine and a warning. But when it happens during qualifying, or there are even more serious consequences, well, then a grid penalty can be imposed. And so be aware that Hamilton is not new to these situations, and care must be taken not to risk creating impediments for the opponents. So this is another thing to add. Certainly, it must also be said that there needs to be direct communication between the track engineer, in this case Riccardo Adami for Hamilton, and the driver himself. Now, having said this about Leclerc, I still want to say that in my opinion, we have also seen a different wing between Leclerc and Hamilton. Hamilton, who wants a bit more incidence on the front, and Leclerc less incidence on the front, because Hamilton needs a more stable front compared to Leclerc, who manages to handle this less solid front end better. However, we have also seen the Leclerc making mistakes. It's a Ferrari that I expected to be a bit more competitive here in Austria. It's strong in the third sector where load is needed, thanks also to the new bottom. However, it is clear that there is a problem at the level of kinematics, suspensions, vehicle dynamics. And for this reason, it struggles in the first and second sector. Ferrari. We can see it well, even from the times, I'll show you the sectors again. You can see that Ferrari is struggling a bit more than its competitors. If we take a look, Leclerc 16.5 in his best sectors, 16.5 in the first sector compared to Norris's 16.3. So 2.5 tenths, more than 2.5 tenths, almost 3 tenths of a difference in just one sector. In the first, which is the traction sector, with 3 turns, practically not even 2 turns. So be careful that the first sector is very short with 2. Not even a turn, 1 turn, and then before turn 3, because there is the photo cell. So basically it loses a lot, almost 3 tenths in 16 seconds of sector. So be careful, because this is an alarming fact to underline. While in the second and also in the third sector, Ferrari loses a bit less. Let's see, yes. 28.9 and 19.6 against 28.7 and 19.4. It's always 2 tenths of a difference, but it's 2 tenths of a difference in longer sectors, especially in the second sector. So it's more understandable already. But the first sector, Ferrari struggles a lot when it shouldn't struggle so much. There it's a problem with the car itself, with the vehicle balance and the insertion of the single-seater. That's the main problem with Ferrari at the moment. It doesn't have that precision in insertion. Marginet also talked about it in the commentary. That McLaren manages to enter curve 1 much stronger because it trusts the front more, Ferrari less so. This with Leclerc. Hamilton even had to use a wing with more incidence to have more trust in the front. And having said that, before we continue to look at the standings, I want to show you first the sector standings divided by best sector. So let's see then. In ORRIS Piastri first sector are the best. A McLaren that really goes strong in traction. And second sector always Norris and Piastri. Up front with Stroll getting in the way, and the third sector always the McLarens up front. I would like to point out how Verstappen is consistently third, fourth, third in all sectors, and Ferrari instead is slow in the first sector. It's not even strong in the second sector. In the third sector, which is the fastest, it manages to make a difference over the others. So at this moment, Ferrari is there, playing it with Mercedes, which has a behavior opposite to that of Ferrari. Mercedes is stronger in the first and second sector, but it's slower in the third. Just like we also see Aston Martin, which is stronger in the first and second sector. We see Stroll and Alonso 4th and 6th in the first sector, 2nd and 10th Alonso, but second Stroll in the second sector, and in the third sector, instead 9th and 14th. So Aston Martin struggles more in the third sector compared to the first two. So a Ferrari that in terms of balance is opposite to Aston Martin and also Mercedes. Instead, both McLaren and Red Bull are very balanced and therefore are currently the favorites to fight for the podium. So let's go see together also the updates brought by Ferrari so we can comment on them and see the major differences on the bottom. So let's see. Here is the list of updates reported by the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile with redistribution of the bottom fences. So also a change of the camber, then reshaped also the expansion area of the tunnel. And then we saw that the front area of the bottom has also been changed, close also to the part of the front wing. And we see that the volume of the diffuser has also been redesigned. So these are the main updates. You see that they are all updates to the bottom and diffuser of Ferrari. Let's also look in detail at the images that show us these changes. Here we see an image that is always reported by the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. Then we go to see in detail, always updates, obviously, of performance. So floor fences, floor body, floor edge, and diffuser. Obviously, this from Ferrari. Let's also quickly look at the other teams, and then we go into detail. What Ferrari has actually modified. So this instead is what McLaren has modified, which continues to bring updates. If you notice McLaren, small changes every time. So it modifies the front suspension and also the brake area. So the front brake part and also the rear brake part. So it has modified the brake cooling part because we know that Austria is a track where you need to have excellent braking and therefore dissipate heat as best as possible when braking. And so you need to modify the area of the front and rear brakes a bit to have better cooling and maintain an ideal temperature in the brake area. So these modifications of McLaren, let's also briefly look at those of Red Bull and Mercedes. This one of Red Bull has a slight modification to the bottom, and then we have Mercedes that has a modification. Also regarding the circuit, to the front area, always the brakes, and also to the engine cover, so to the area of the engine hood for the cooling of that area. So, speaking of Ferrari, I have to show you in detail the changes made. So let's take a look at the image where it is best seen and where the modified parts are also highlighted. Here it can be seen very well. Well, this is the expansion area of the diffuser, so the side area on the left side of the diffuser. We see here the bottom part of the sidewalk at the back, which has also been modified to change it. Then the vortices that are generated in this area direct them as best as possible towards the rear suspension and also the diffuser, so towards this area. Here, in fact, this update will work best when the update to the rear suspension also arrives. And here the front modification in the part, let's say, close to the fences of the venturi channels, which, however, are inside. This is the outer part of the sidewalk. And here we see the modification precisely of the fences that I was also saying before. So they have been modified. On the side part, always to better direct the flows under the car towards the venturi channels and then towards the diffuser. So these are the main changes of Ferrari. We also mentioned the front, different between Leclerc and Hamilton. Really minor changes, that is not important changes. However, each driver has his own needs, obviously on how much load, how many incidents to give on the front. And now let's also look at the times. First, I wanted to show you also the statements of Toto Wolff. I wanted to comment on them with you because Toto Wolff has taken a stand and he said we have our pair of drivers. As for the drivers market, we have Russell, we have Antonelli. We are satisfied with both. Both are strong. We have seen the victory. Last race of Russell, we see that Russell has matured. He can be the first driver. Kimi, race after race is getting closer. So we don't need to look for another driver. But at the same time, if there's a four-time world champion like Max available because Red Bull has its internal management problems, it's not certain that Red Bull will be strong from next year, 2026, with the revolution on power units and cars. So it's normal that Max's entourage is looking for another team because Max is a world champion. They want him to be the driver with the best car. And on the other hand, it's normal that a Toto Wolff at the moment and Mercedes say stop everything. We're not renewing Russell for now because in case Max becomes available, Max has been a world champion 4 times. We give him precedence. In short, it's not too far-fetched in the sense that it's true. Mercedes has its structured team and it's a very strong team. Guys, because both Russell and Antonelli are incredible drivers and therefore on paper, Mercedes has no reason to change its drivers. However, one cannot also exclude the fact of not taking Verstappen. If Ferrari had the chance to take Verstappen, they would try at least then Verstappen. We have to see whether I accept or not, but it is said that Mercedes is the most favored team for 2026. If that were the case and Max knew it, could Max try to go to Mercedes? So for this reason, Toto Wolff is waiting to renew Russell to see if there is actually Max's interest in going to Mercedes. But in my opinion, Toto Wolff will tell Max, either you come right away starting from 2026 or I renew Russell. For Toto years, which can be 2 years or a multi-year, and then we will evaluate you later on. But we're talking about around 2028, 2029, when theoretically, when Max has his contract expiring with Red Bull, which is at the end of 2028. So excuse the parenthesis, but we want to make it on the market discussion because then it changes all the cards on the table. Because if, in case Toto Wolff should take Verstappen, who goes to Red Bull, Russell, or do they take Imbland and promote him? But at that point, there wouldn't be a lead driver at Red Bull, so it would be a drastic change. In my opinion, it's much more likely that Max Points could go to Aston Martin, which is growing a lot, if he were to change teams and leave Red Bull. But we'll see. So having said that, I've dwelled a bit on the market issue, but we also need to talk about the actual times of free practice, 2, and the race pace. I'll briefly show the free practice. 1, the standings. This is what we saw earlier in the free practice. 1, Russell, Verstappen, Piastri, done, quad, as I was saying. Great performance even on the dry lap. We also saw a step forward from Sauber with Bortoleto 6th, a Sauber that has grown a lot thanks to the days brought and also Alpine. Having said that, Hamilton did few laps in a free practice. 1, Ferrari had gearbox problems. That's why Hamilton's gearbox was also replaced. Then for free practice, 2, Beganovic also didn't do many laps, but he definitely did more laps than Hamilton, who did 19 and Beganovic 31. Having said that, we see that it's a ranking that obviously doesn't count much because obviously the track got more rubber into your free practice too. Let's look at the times and I'll show you first the tire issue, which tires they used and which tires they will use in the race. It will probably be 2 stops in Austria. It's always like that. The 2-stop strategy is the one that works best. We will go on medium, hard medium. Very likely because it's a track where there's a high degradation of the tires. And we're going to take advantage of the undercut. So whoever will degrade the tires less can better exploit the undercut. They have a long stint at the end. And on this, I refer to Ferrari because in my opinion, guys, be careful. Maybe Ferrari is not favored in qualifying. And we also see it from the times. But in the race, it could be the favored team, because it can execute a strategy with greater undercut compared to the others. So stop earlier, squeeze the tires more, go faster in the first stint, and then extend the last stint, and therefore try to manage the tires more at the end of the race. So if Ferrari were to prove itself as it did today, even in the race pace simulation, to be able to manage the tires well, this is a great advantage point in Austria, which is a track where managing the tires is fundamental. Having said that, we have seen how this year being ahead on the starting grid is very important, so we should not underestimate the qualifications too much. Let's also see how the various drivers have performed. So we saw that Piastri ran with soft, hard, and soft. Norris did soft, medium, soft, and ran first with the mediums. Verstappen only with the soft, Stroll hard, soft, Leclerc ran with medium and soft. Let's move on. Russell, medium, soft. In general, almost everyone medium, soft, except for Piastri, Verstappen, who only ran with the soft, Hamilton hard, soft. Him too. So a different choice. So be careful that you could also diversify then the strategy in the race. Many have run a lot with the soft tires, which actually, since there isn't a lot of degradation compared, there is a lot of degradation in Austria, but they expected more than what was predicted. So the soft is not a choice to be discarded outright. However, in my opinion, most of the drivers will opt for the medium, but it will also depend a lot on the weather conditions and the track. Having said that, let's also look at the times together and let's make a comparison on the race pace of the various drivers in free practice too. So let's see together who went faster, who went slower, what should we expect. So this was the race pace. Let's compare Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Russell at this moment. And let's look at the times together. Here they are. So Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Russell. Let's look at Russell, who started his session much earlier. He did many laps with medium tires. He turned 1:10.5, so he started a bit higher. 1:10.0, 1:10.0, 1:10.0, 1:99, 1:95, 1:96, 1:1.00, 1:98, 1:10, 1:10, 1:10.0, 1:10.1, 1:10.07. So he turned on an average of 110 low. We see Verstappen 110, 199, 198, 195, 191, and 193. Here we also put the slow lap, just so we consider them all. In fact, Verstappen did a few slow laps in the meantime, and now we are reviewing the times instead. So a slightly lower average, that of Verstappen, but with soft rubber, so it's normal that he also runs stronger with less consistency. Because these laps here at the end, 193 and 191, he did them after having done some slow laps. So this to consider. Instead, we see Norris 110.2. Let's move on. Sorry, that with soft rubber. So we start here. 110.0, 199, 196, 194, 195, 194, 193, 197, 193. You see that compared to Russell, the difference is abyssal. Almost 7/10 of a difference. A tire that lasted until the end, that never had any degradation, that of Norris. So a rhythm, a pace, an incredible race, clearly superior, in this case McLaren compared to Mercedes. Let's see. Leclerc did 195, 198, 199, 195, 197, 197, 198, 197. So, and then it went up a bit, 110, 1. But compared to Mercedes, Ferrari is also clearly better. So on the race pace, Ferrari is better off than Mercedes. It is worse off than McLaren. And it's there, in line with Red Bull, which, however, ran with soft tires, so softer tires. Let's also look at the comparison between the teammates. So let's see. Now, we always put Verstappen as a reference. Then we put Piastri, Hamilton. And let's also look at Antonelli. And let's see their pace. And let's also make a comparison on them. In particular, I'm interested in seeing Hamilton and also Piastri, who has run with hard tires. This is the laps. Let's go see them together. So it's Antonelli 193, 194, 194, 194, 191, 193, 194, 194, and then the times. But they have risen a lot. 198, 110, 3, 110, 2, 110, 0, 110, 3. So the pace is very similar to that of Russell. He did much better in the first part of the simulation and worse in the second. So I saw a great Antonelli, but there's a bit too much of a difference between the first part of the simulation and the second. Let's look at Hamilton with the soft 199, 197, 110, 0, 197, slow lap 111, 111, 6, 197. So a pace similar to that of Verstappen, maybe a bit slower, because Verstappen managed to also do a 9.5, so similar to Verstappen, with the soft, with the same tire, then turned with the hard for a few laps. We also see Piastri, instead 194, 197, 110, 0, 197, 197, 197, so a tremendous pace also from Piastri. Looking at the race pace, it is clear how McLaren, with a compound difference harder, manages to keep the same pace, so do the same laps as the other teams of Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes. At this moment, I see McLaren clearly favored because it manages to run much stronger and keeps a constant pace. The second force could be Ferrari itself. Red Bull is also close, so Ferrari and Red Bull are very close, and Mercedes is a bit more detached at this moment. Fourth force, but be careful that Mercedes is faster than Ferrari on the qualifying pace, so it's very tough and tight. We'll see a bit how it will go. I'll tell you my prediction for the qualifications, so I'll tell you Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, because in my opinion, McLaren and Red Bull have something more than all the others. Also tell me your prediction in the comments I read and reply to everyone. Tell me, how do you see this Ferrari here in Austria? And that's it, that's all from here. I'll leave you with some related videos and see you in the next video.